or you think, oh, look at my friends, my peers are building, they are buying, they are making babies, and I'm missing out, time is running out. Did you have any of those feelings?
I did, and um, for those 5 years, the 4 or 5 years, I actually didn't even date.
Welcome again. So I've got an interesting guest today. It is Dr. Nthatisi Metsing, who has a PhD in mercantile law, and her primary focus was on child labor. The co-founder of NTT Consultancy, and currently between South Africa and Lesotho. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. Long time, long time. No see. How many years now has it been since I last saw you or you saw me?
Um, I saw the
Book
last
launch.
time I saw you.
It was
Huh?
book launch.
No, 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 no. It was after the book launch. Remember the psychology of cheating?
Oh yes, yes. I
Mm.
had one of those workshops, and then you came. You wanted to know about cheating and things like that.
Yeah, what's going on?
Oh, because you were
Yeah.
thinking about doing it, or somebody was. No, I'm kidding.
Ah!
You don't have to answer that one. Yeah, there's a lot of infidelity going around.
It's too much.
It's
Mm,
too much, eh?
it's too
Was the
much.
workshop helpful? Did you learn something?
I did. It was quite interesting because it's like you want to understand the mind behind the people who do the cheating. You understand?
Yeah.
Not because people don't cheat. Like there are so many other ways that to reach it down, but that one was a bit okay. Why does that men cheat? Or why does that women cheat? So
Okay.
it was interesting. It was quite interesting.
I mean, did you understand a little bit, or should
I
we organize another one so that it's a bit clearer?
No, I think you should organize one because God, this period of COVID, the infidelity was on another level.
I see, I see. So
So it would be really nice to reflect and say, okay, fine, COVID season, what happened?
I see. No, no problem. We should organize why, the psychology of infidelity, why people cheat. I actually have some posts on Instagram. I should do a video. I think I should do a YouTube video. I'll see what I do. But in any case, we're here to
Okay.
talk about you, Dr. Metsing. Now that you have your PhD, I'm quite excited. I remember we were talking about it. You were studying it, and it was frustrating, and yeah, so I mean, you focused on children, child
Yes,
labor
yes, child labor
in
specifically.
mercantile law. Maybe educate some of us, regarding what's mercantile law, and why
Okay.
did you choose that topic in the first place?
Um, Mercantile law, I didn't know much about it because I was from a different field. I was from politics. So when they saw my topic, they thought it would fit perfectly with mercantile law, where they deal or focus mostly with labor law. So it's within the mercantile law department, you find banking law, you find I think tax, you find labor law. So it's like a lot of other disciplines within it.
Mhm.
But with mine, because it was focusing on labor and particularly children, it was more of okay, go to mercantile law and let's see how it goes because you're dealing with labor law. And I think with children also there's like a department on child law, so they are kind of merged or they are linked to a certain extent. Hence, they put me there. Initially, I wanted to be under human rights because I thought it was a human rights issue also. So yeah, that is that.
uh, Human rights regarding children. So did you always have an interest in children? Why particularly children?
I Well, Lesotho, knowing Lesotho is a very small country, and with the levels of poverty and economic inequalities and everything, you find that children are most vulnerable or marginalized. So that is what really brought me to this topic, or rather the study, because it was more like I'm seeing a lot of children on the street, and I'm seeing a lot of children working, and I'm trying to understand why is it that they are on the streets and why is it that they're working? Aren't they supposed to be at home? Aren't they supposed to be at school? Aren't they supposed to be taken care of as opposed to them taking care of their families? So that is what actually triggered my interest in children and the protection of children in general.
Yeah, so your curiosity was sparked by all these children, roaming around, not in school. Were they being locked up in factories and working? What kind of jobs were they doing?
Not necessarily. In the majority of children actually on the streets, they're selling on the streets. Many are work as shepherds, right? In that, because we are a very small country and mostly dominated by the highlands. So it's like animals everywhere. So livestock, it became another issue where you find that at an age of 3, a child is literally taken to tender or care for animals somewhere in the veld. So it was more like, aren't they supposed to be protected? Aren't
Mm,
they supposed to work at a particular age? We cannot move away from child labor. It's one of the oldest professions. It's there, and what I wanted to do was, what is it that we are doing to protect them?
mm. You remind me of when you meet usually these older gentlemen, usually at university you find some of the professors and some of the doctors who talk about, when they were young, there was this debate whether they should go to school or go look after cattle. And it was a big thing because it affected maybe how far you progressed. When, some people would talk about when their peers went to school, they had to go take care of the cattle. Or you did the other way. You have to take the cattle, go to school. You had to do these chores that interfered with your life. And I see even a lot of adults, when I used to do, I think, work, road accident fund work, when we used to assess people and we talk about educational history, a lot of them would say, I left school. Well, my highest qualification is I passed a grade 7 because I had to work for the family or something like that. And so you had this interest, and then you started researching. So what did your research involve? What did you have to do?
Okay, well, the topic basically says evaluating the practice of child labor in Lesotho and identifying strategies to better protect the children. So it's merely that thing of walking around and realizing that other people are not in school like you are. And you wonder, what is the problem? Why is it that they're here? And I started asking around, like I would see those kids with kids and everything, and I would ask, where is your mom? What's going on? So they'll tell you different stories. Some lost their parents, some the parents are just not working, some it would be, let's say for instance, a child who's like 16, 17, they are on the streets, they're selling and everything. They tell you, no, I just got married at a young age and I had to go and fend for myself because now I have to provide for my family. Some you realize that their families were so poor, they actually had to marry the children so that the child would bring in income. But that child now is a wife and has to go work to provide for her own family. So those are the things that actually made me want to look into this. Why is it that this is the case? You find, especially in the mountainous area or region, you find children who are tendering cattle. Today they're in school, tomorrow they're not in school. And you're thinking, okay, fine, what does the Education Act say? I think one of the interesting things was I was not looking at this from a very social or political or economic perspective only, but I looked at it from a legal point. What is the law saying? Is the law really protecting the children? Can I say the law really answers to the social conditions or the economic conditions or the political conditions that are facing the young children in the city? And it was bad. What I found, it was interesting because you have the act, but it doesn't do anything. So the implementation becomes a problem. That was
So yeah, we know that story of good laws, good, on paper, but implementation is leaves much to be desired. And so, how did you go about then also just maybe investigating? Did you have to talk to the children? How did you structure your study, your research?
I didn't. I did a desktop research rather, because I was mostly in Pretoria as opposed to Lesotho, and one of the examiners actually wanted me to go deep into it. But there was another lady that I was actually focusing on her work who really went into um, these different places and then interviewed the children. So I was actually using her data also to support whatever it is that I was actually writing. So it was mainly desktop. I had to go to what do you call this, the Department of Labor, and there was no information. I had to go to court to get like cases, and there was nothing on child labor. But what you'd find is cases on, let's say, inheritance, issues concerning inheritance, issues concerning sexual exploitation, or let's say what, human trafficking. But when it comes to child labor, it is prohibited, but there is no case, none whatsoever. So I just sat down and I did a desktop research. I kind of made also what do you call this, a comparative analysis study where I looked at the different African countries. I didn't go outside Africa. I actually did Morocco, Tanzania, South Africa to just check how they deal with child labor and what progress they've made in terms of that. So that was basically, it was more like a comparative study as to say, this is what is happening in Lesotho, and this is what comes out, this is the outcome, but what is it that the other countries did and how far are they? And you find that it's a general problem everywhere, but other countries have made progress.
And what did you find? Maybe if you take us further there, what is it that you found?
Because we are a very cultural state and we are guided by traditions, it's more of, it's normal. It's a norm for a child to work. And for me, it is not, because they're denied the right. And second of all, I found the irregularities within the law, in that the Labor Act will define a child as theft. And then the Constitution does not even define a child. And then you have Children's Act that was, I think, enacted in 2011, only in 2011, that states that a child is something else. So a child, according to the Act, is 18 and below. According to the Labor Act, is 15 and below. And when you look at international law, it's 18 and below. So those irregularities already, they kind of bring in some question. Why would labor define a child as 15 and the Act define a child as 18? So already the definition of a child in Lesotho is a very complex issue, and it needs to be dealt with. It needs to be reformed or maybe reviewed to say this is a child and this is not a child. So how do you then deal with issues that are concerning these people? So those are the other things. And I found that stuff like child marriage, for me, it became child labor in a sense. I'm actually writing an article on child marriage as an invisible act of child labor, because they commodify marriage in that I'm going to purchase this child, they're going to be mine, and then they're going to work for me. And the parents who give the child, it is for economic gain, not because they want any relationship between the families. So it is not marriage in the context that we believe or we think marriage is. So already marriage is modified. And that is one of the issues that I found. So irregularities in terms of law, commodification of marriage, economic discrepancies in Lesotho, already poverty levels are very high. So those are the things that I actually found. But because of those things, many children actually forced into marriage at a very young age. And I think one thing that I realized, this COVID thing, it has already, it actually fueled it. It made it even worse. So many children in Lesotho currently are married below the age of 16 because of that, of COVID. It's like we need to get money. So for us to get money, we need to do something. There's so many people now, children, who have turned into sexual slaves. So there are projects around Lesotho where we're building this, we're building them to do, but that is the center where now we're seeing, I would say, prostitution, child prostitution. And what is it that the government is doing? What is it that the law is saying? There is nothing that is being done. We are just talking about it, but what next?
Yeah, that's that's sobering. I mean, so on the one hand, you describe the discrepancy, right, between 15 and 18-year-olds, and now this marriage thing, or I don't know if we can call it marriage, where children are being exploited for gain, for financial gain, and now you're also describing how people have to sell themselves, I suppose, to make ends meet. Now, so maybe if we can explain a bit further, did you find that there's a difference in how boys and girls are affected, in that, is it that the boys usually go up in the mountain, are looking after cattle, the girls are being sent to other families for for marriage, or were there other things that you found? Was there some sort of pattern that you picked up?
Okay. With the guys, for the guys, it's more of a rite of passage. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, if you work and then you tend a cattle, it shows that you're going to be a proper man. You're going to be a family man. You'll be able to take care of your children, because what happens is that the remuneration is in terms of cattle also. So the person already is working with the mindset that as soon as I have about 5 of this, now I'm going to get married, so I can pay my dollar. And then with the girls, it was more of provide, take care of your family. You know, and I was reading through some work. I think it was done by Bulendi Duka. She actually mentioned the 5 types of, I think 5 or 4 types of what you call this, of child labor in Lesotho, where you have parents who lend their children to the family members. And in that context, you find that the child goes to the family member with the thought that, look, this child is going to be taken care of by this person better than I could as a parent. So when that girl gets there, they start working, they become domestic workers. So school is not even an option for them. And then you have those ones whose parents are just drunkards. So the child has to take care of the siblings. She has to go out and make sure that the children are eating, they're well taken care of and stuff. And then you have those other families where they say, bring your child, we'll take the child to school, but we're not going to pay the child. So the child will do house chores, will work, will do whatever it is. Let's say, for instance, they have a shop, the child will go sell in the shop, but the payment is we are taking the child to school. So it's a lot of so many things. They don't consider that child labor, but if you're to understand what child labor is and making a child work, oppressing them and exploiting them, then that amounts to child labor. But in our culture or in our country, that is not that's not child labor. That is culture. That is the norm. So with the guys, is a rite of passage. With the girls, also with the working and the domestic work that they do, it's also a rite of passage. You're going to be a better woman. So the pattern is more of a traditional way of living. It's like it's normal for you to do this. And I'm thinking, if the Kingdom of Lesotho, for instance, has allowed children to go to school for free, why is it that they're not going to school? Why is it that they don't? Let's split hours then. Let's split the hours. Let's say you go to school in the morning, in the afternoon you take a break, you do your schoolwork, and then start doing the chores. Because at the end of the day, every single person still has to do the chores. But my problem was the denial of education, the denial of being a child, because some people need to play. So you're psychologically growing these children. Instead of them being children, they become adults. So they start taking responsibilities that are not even theirs, that are even heavy for them to a certain
Mm-hmm.
extent.
And so, I mean, what you're describing then makes me wonder, because it's like there's this interesting relationship between culture and exploitation, and like blurred lines. And so, because earlier you used the word normal, like for some people it seemed like it's normal practice, and so it makes me wonder that do the children themselves feel there's something wrong? I mean, if a boy is working there and he's thinking that, okay, maybe after a while I have my own kettle, then I can start my own, I suppose, wealth building. It's a rite of passage, and I'm becoming a man. And if a young girl is thinking that, or if the family is thinking that, okay, she can help, she's getting educated, does it bother them? Like, have you come across anything that how they reflect upon? Do they say, I don't want to be here, I want to go to school? Or is it, do they have ambivalent feelings also about what's going on?
Um, one of the articles that I read, it was actually an interview that was done by one of the newspapers in here, and the lady was really upset because it's like I've been denied some of the chances that I could have. I think if I went to school, I'd have better chances in life, but because I was married by my father, who was in the mines, and then just sent somebody to say, "Come, I have a daughter, just marry her." The girl could not go further. She could not further her studies. So she felt she had been robbed. And some of the guys also feel nobody actually talks to them about some of the issues. Nobody wants to be sitting in the mountains when it's cold. Nobody wants to be subjected to exploitation. So some of the children, yes, you can tell that they don't want to be there. Some are even tired. Like as you walk down the streets of, let's say, in town, you look at them and you can see that they are exhausted. And when you ask them, why aren't you going home? Why aren't you going to, like, no, my mom will pick me up because I have to bring this amount of money to the house tonight. And you're thinking, that is not what a child is supposed to go through. So there are really mixed feelings. There are certain children who say, it's okay, this is the way of life. And there are those who say, no, I also want to be in the classroom. I also want to learn. I also want to do certain things. I also want to go to university one day. They have dreams, but it's like they're cut off because of the situation or the circumstances that they're living in.
You know, when you say that, I think of one of the things that really, I don't know, it rubs me off the wrong way is, you know, when we drive here in South Africa, you find there'll be this lady with a child sitting next to the road. And, you know, I always look at those children and my heart is pained because I always ask myself, so this child is missing out, you know, on development, you know, psychologically. This child is learning how to ask for money. They're being deprived of, you know, their minds growing, their, you know, the gross motor, fine motor development, socializing with their peers, you know, and, you know, things like that. And the point about, you said there was a lady who talked about the opportunities that she missed. You know, when you meet a lot of, say, domestic workers in South Africa, and people struggling also with unemployment sometimes, well, we talk a lot about graduates who are not getting jobs, but then there are people who left school in high school, in primary, and life is just rough for them because, I mean, if you have to get a job, they'll even say, well, do you have a matric? And so things like that. So when you say that, you remind me of that. And we're pursuing, it's about money, I suppose. How much are we talking about? I mean, how much is this you know, when you marry off your daughter, um how much do you really get, and what kind of amounts are we talking about here?
I can't really say for sure, but it's more of, look, as long as we're able to survive for just another day,
Yeah.
you understand? That is how bad poverty or how the economic inequality is in Lesotho. It's more about survival for just that day and then continue. And like when you're saying about the children who are on the streets and everything, it's really sad. I remember as I was reading through something I found at some agency where some children say, you know what, I just want to make money. I just want to provide for my family. So if it means me leaving my family and going to work, so be it. So they've come to a point where poverty has demoralized them to a point where they would just take anything at any time. So that is the sad thing about child labor, because some children, you find that the child is 8 and both parents have passed on. And you're talking about social grants. And social grants, I do not know who they go to. It's more of who is really taking care of these children, and what grant are we talking the amount in terms of grant? What amount are we talking about? Because the last time I had checked, for instance, I think disabled people, the disability grant was 300 for 3 months. So you can just imagine, what is it that I'm going to do with 100 rand for 3 months? I mean, for the next 3 months, I have 100 rand for each month. Food is expensive. Clothes are expensive. Children, you have children, whether you're disabled or not. Some people are disabled and they have children. And how do I take care of my family with only just 300 rand? So already such things come into play. Who is responsible for the kids? Who is supposed to be taking care of them? Even the vulnerable, like when they define vulnerable children, they include child labor, but you realize that they focus more on the orphans more than children who are on the street. And it's like they don't even want to know why they're on the street. Oh, it's normal. Be on the street, rent for yourself, work, and get some money. But it's not supposed to be like that. I think that is what really bothered me. The fact that you have people who are passing, who are government officials, they see those children every single day, and they do nothing about it. In fact, they go into parliament, they make policies, and then they step back. Even when you look at let's say, for instance, what do you call this? When you look at the report to the United Nations on the rights of the children's committee, Lesotho is way behind. Like, I think the last submission was 2017, and it was even late. It was 5 years late. So you think, okay, what is it that we are doing as the country to protect the children?
I'm just wondering how, the work you were doing. Were you getting upset? How did you cope? Were you like, how did you deal with all these things that you're finding out? Because I can see why this can be disturbing, or difficult emotionally. I mean, how did you work through that, learning that?
It was quite emotional. It was very emotional. I remember one day meeting one of the girls, and she did not even have shoes. I just broke down, and she's just standing there, and she's selling sweets, and I was like, I don't even have money. If only I started asking her questions like, where do you stay? Because I thought maybe by the end of the month I'll probably have something, and then maybe buy her shoes, or I don't know. But it was emotionally draining. I don't want to lie. It was emotionally draining. It was. I really got depressed at some point in time because you're looking at all those children and you see nothing happening, nobody coming to the aid. People are just sitting and making those laws and that making all those policies, but the implementation is zero. So
Yeah,
it was hard. It was hard. It was hard. But you just have to grow a thick skin and say, look, I need to do something. I need to write something. Hopefully someone will see it and hopefully somebody will actually implement it. So
yeah,
we actually wrote with that hope of, look, this is the case. I'm hoping that somebody will read my work, and when they read my work, this is what will happen.
yeah. Speaking of which, I mean, you had to, I suppose, pull yourself, start something, finish something. You did finish. So your highlights, because you're dealing with such a difficult theme topic, and like what was wonderful about what you were doing? What were your highs and what were your lows?
I think the wonderful thing would be I did what I love.
Hmm.
I enjoyed doing it as much as it was painful. I enjoyed doing what I liked, and you know, when I presented my proposal the first time in the department, uh, the oral defense part, and one of the co-supervisors actually was an external examiner. He looked at me and said, why this topic? And then I told him, I just looked at the children. I just felt I needed to address this issue. And he was asking whether I was a lawyer. And I was like, no, I'm not a lawyer, but those are the issues that need to be dealt with, not only legally, socially, politically, but in all areas, in all, we need to engage and talk about these issues because those are the issues that are affecting us. We are talking about the children of tomorrow, I mean, the future of tomorrow. And at some point in time, I was working with NEPAD, and they would be talking, they had a picture of a child when they were dealing with whatever it was, a presentation, they would have a child. And I remember in one meeting raising my hand and asking, do you deal with children? And they said, no. That broke me.
Mhm.
Because I'm like, how do you deal with the youth and you're forgetting where they're coming from? They become children before they become youth. So if you don't groom them at that age, how do they become the youth that you are talking about or that you aspire to have as a non-governmental organization? And the guy said, no, that is why we have people like you. But there was never anything that happened about children in NEPAD for that time. But lately, I've realized that they're actually now getting into dealing with children's rights, and all that. So the highlight would be it was nice. It was something that I liked. I loved it. I enjoyed completing my task, even though it was hard. But it wasn't nice. I'm
Wasn't
I'm I'm literally I'm still literally when I read some of my work, I still get some topics to write on. Like for instance, like as I was telling you, I'm writing on child marriage and how it is an invisible act of child labor. And you talked about boys and how they take this. And actually, I'm also writing, or I'm about to start writing an article also on the forgotten species. I call them forgotten species because nobody really tapped into the nail to find out what exactly is the problem. Why are we acting like this? I feel like they are forgotten. So we don't get into what exactly is that they went through that they need to put out there. In fact, you hear about women all the time, but what about our brothers and sisters? I mean, our brothers, uncles, our fathers, because they went through a lot also. So
Yeah, but
it's one of
you
those
know, you
things.
know how the world works. If you're a man, you need to um,
Enough,
You
don't
need to
cry.
toughen up. And I mean, yeah, if you go through stuff, I mean, well, I mean, it doesn't matter. People like you commit crime and things like that, so you need to see what you do with yourself. I'm being cynical, but you know, that's if you talk to a lot of men, you get the sense that that's how they feel. Like, oh well, we're
Exactly.
just here to suffer. Someone like me did something bad, you know, and I must just wear this badge for all the men. So I hear you. And how so with your promoter, you know, how was the relationship? Did you have a good relationship with the people you were working with? Were there
Oh yeah.
clashes there?
Well, supervisor students, there's always clashes
Yeah.
because you're either late or they don't respond on time and start panicking and all those things. So it wasn't really good. I had a very interesting supervisor. He was a very nice guy, and he would sit and talk. Even though it was not for a long time, I was even telling one of my other friends, like, the longest meeting that I had with my supervisor was like literally 7 minutes.
I see.
That was
Was it like chop
the
chop chop,
longest.
get it done?
So
Chop, chop.
he's always on the move, and he was the head of department at that time, so he was quite busy.
Okay.
But other than that, the other people that I interacted with, those that I was getting information from, which they gave me all that I needed. Although I still feel there is more to be written on this topic.
Yeah. And the other thing is, you know, to pursue anything worthwhile, there's a lot of sacrifice, you know. What do you feel is the biggest thing that you sacrificed in pursuing what you pursued? And because I think by the time you got it, there are some things you sacrificed and lost.
You lose a lot of friends, a lot of friends. You lose them
Friendship.
because they don't. Yes, because they don't understand. It's more like, oh, I know you're always busy. Oh, just because you're doing a PhD doesn't mean. So you those that became close, became very very close. Those that decided to leave, it was like one of those things you don't understand, but until you're in my shoes, you understand. So
Mhm.
I lost a lot of relationships. I lost sometimes I feel like time because you're sitting and you're thinking I could have done this, but I had to focus on this. So even work, I did not even look for work. I did not look for anything. It was just a PhD, and that was just it. Um,
Yes, I was going to ask, you know, were you thinking, oh, look at my friends, my peers are building, they are buying, they are making babies, and I'm missing out, time is running out. Did you have any of those feelings?
I did, and um, for those 5 years, the 4 5 years, I actually didn't even date. That is how hectic it was. So
Really?
I'm dating now.
So how did you cope? Wasn't it rough? Wasn't it tough? You know, what were you
it,
telling yourself to?
it was rough because every single time I'd get, I think what I did, my escape was to run home. Every time I would feel that, look, I cannot take this anymore. I'd literally get into the car and come to the hospital. Stay
Like,
for about 3 4 weeks, and then after I feel like I've calmed down, then I'll go back. But more often than not, it was very depressing. Let me just say that it was a quite depressive journey to a certain. Well, it was nice. It was also depressive because I remember there was a month I was depressed, literally depressed. I didn't open my curtains. I would just wake up to just shower. I don't remember having like proper meals. I just cried because it felt like it was such a heavy burden. I was even asking myself, am I sure this is what I want to do? And I think after that month, I remember calling home and telling my mother, I think it's time to go home. I think it's time to accept defeat. I think it's okay. Maybe I'll come back again. I don't know, but I cannot take this anymore. At that time, also my supervisor was not responding. I was also not making progress. It was terrible. So yeah, it got real. So I
yeah.
lost. Um,
So
yeah,
sounds like it was
it was
changing
bad.
you as a person, right? Because yeah, but anything worthwhile in life is like it changes you. As you pursue it, you change yourself. And so I'm just thinking, you know, for 5 years you never felt like, oh, somebody could hold me. You know, I just want to melt in somebody's.
You see, even if I actually had those. I had those moments. Where I was like, So, hello, how are you doing? How are you coping? Let me take you out for lunch, man, or something. I did, but also I felt because I was in such a mood, a state of depression, I was not going to be any good to anybody.
Yeah.
So so for me not to be a burden or rather destroy another soul, let me just try and work on me. But Angel was there, hey? Angel was there. She was
Your
in Cape
friend,
Town.
Angel, your friend. Yeah, yeah.
She was there in Cape Town, and she was living in Cape Town. Used to see but I would call. We'll be on the call for hours, and I'll just be crying. And she'll literally cry with me. So like, my friend, it's okay. And then we'll just. That is one person that I'll always say we took this journey together. She was part of the journey, even though it was indirectly, but she was there. So yeah, it was okay. It got to a point where I picked myself up. I tried to be okay, and yeah, I moved on.
Okay, now rounding up now, but you kept going. You kept pushing, and what was the thing? Because you wanted to tap out, but you didn't. It was rough, but you didn't give up. And so, what kept you going?
Excuse me. You know what? I always reminded myself that I was not there by mistake. I think that was one of the things that I kept telling myself. I was like, God would not allow me to be here for me to fail. So even when I felt weak, I looked back and I looked at some of my colleagues who we did masters with, and I said, look, I did not even qualify. I don't say I qualified in the sense that the marks were not as brilliant as other students would say. Um, Maybe they got 90% or 80% for them to do the PhD. I just got there, and it was not coincidental that I was there. I had to do this, and I always thought I had to finish, and if I had to finish, I had to finish strong. So that is what kept me going. I had to trust God. I had to trust that I was not there by mistake. I had to believe that it is not by mistake that I'm doing the PhD. It has to be done, and it had to be done by me. So it's either I pick myself up and continue, or leave the thing and regret for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
So I just decided, you know what, I'm going to trust God. I'm going to push, and I had to pray, a lot of praying, a lot of fasting had to come go into that, because it was not easy at all.
Yeah.
It wasn't.
A lot of
And
trusting,
mm,
fasting, praying, and how was did you when you graduated? Did you was it during COVID? Were you able to go to the university, or was it one of these virtual things?
it was a virtual one, because it was in December 2020. It was last year in December,
Yeah, and
and
the
so
gown, and the gown, and the hat, and the
so fortunately, all the students who graduated last year have been given the opportunity to go to campus and take pictures in the regalia. So that is what I'm going to do now, in a couple of weeks. So that is what I'm going to do. But the day of my graduation, for some reason, I did not have emotion. I don't know what happened. I just shut down. I didn't know whether I should be excited, whether I didn't have any emotion. It was more like, you're done.
yeah. So
Yeah.
sounds a lot like on my wedding day, I had that feeling.
Mm.
When I handed in my master's thesis, I had that feeling. And I think the person who captured me the best is there's this movie, I forget the name, but Tom Hanks is there. And it's about I think the Somalian pirates, they hijack a ship, and then obviously goes through this ordeal. Okay, spoiler alert. And then where he gets rescued, right? But it is when he gets rescued, he just in the way he breaks down, like it wasn't dramatic, but it was like, when you've been through something very difficult, and now you're like, okay, um it's done now, and then you just have all these emotions. You can be numb, you can, but it sounds like you went through a lot, and it makes sense. So, but you're looking forward to the photo shoot and
I
everything.
am. Yes,
Wow,
I'm very excited, because I've always wanted. I was like, there is no way I'm going to miss the red gown. Because for my
yeah,
masters, after masters, I didn't. I did not want to go to the podium. I felt like the masters was also as hectic,
Yeah.
but PhD was first. So with masters, I really didn't want to go to the podium, but I was forced. So with this one, I was like, no, I have to.
How
It's
come?
a very
How come you didn't want to go on?
I just felt, I don't know, I hated the journey also. It was
Oh,
not nice.
I
Yes,
see.
it was not, because I was from a different faculty. So getting into the faculty of law, having to learn the jargon, the way of writing and everything, it was a bit heavy on me. Even with this PhD, because I moved from human rights, the way they write in the human rights law department is different from the way we write in Mercantil law. So I had to learn and adapt to all the standards, which was a pretty hectic for me. But eventually, I got to do what was proper. But with the masters, it was not nice. I just didn't like it. I don't know. There was just something. So
Yeah.
with this one, I was really numb when the graduation was taking place. I was like,
Yeah,
wow.
which is interesting for me that though you didn't like it, but you're able to complete it, and I think it's a rare quality that we lack these days, because we always want to do things that we enjoy and we like, but sometimes we find ourselves doing something important, but we just and sometimes we want to, because it doesn't feel good, you want to let it go, but you were able to do that. Maybe lastly, it's just encouragement for anybody walking your journey right now, not opening curtains, crying, thinking about tapping out. What would you say to those people?
I'd say just don't give up. You are not there coincidentally. There is a reason, and there is something that is in you that puts you there, and don't ever dim that light. Continue to persevere. It's not easy. Many have left this journey, but for you as an individual and as a person who really wanted this, don't give up. Continue. Pray about it. Um, Talk to people about it when you feel like you cannot take it anymore. Because one thing that I realized, we don't talk. We bottle up all these things because we think people cannot relate. But there are certain people who, although they don't relate to what you're going through, are able to assist you. So it's one of those things where you like just focus and do what it is that you need to do. Distractions will come and go, but just try and mute all distractions and just focus. And don't let procrastination take over you, because that is one of the things that I realized it's an enemy. Most of us don't finish on time because of procrastination. I'll do it, I'll do it, I'll do it. Or whenever you get a bit discouraged, you're like, let me, no, don't do that. Just believe that you are not there by accident, and you will complete.
Dr. Mitsing, thank you very much for the time. Thank you for the opportunity. Great seeing you again. I
Thank
wish you
you.
all the best. May you go and do great things.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for this time. I appreciate it.
No, take
I
care.
thank you, you too.